A late-night phone call broke the tranquility of Detective James's home. The ringing echoed through the dimly lit rooms, pulling James from sleep's sweet embrace. Known for his razor-sharp mind and an uncanny eye for detail, James was no stranger to midnight summons. Yet this call held an urgency that set his heart racing. "Detective James, we need you at the Thompson estate. There's been a murder," the voice on the other end declared, the words heavy with dread. The Thompson estate, a place synonymous with opulence and power, now tainted by the stench of death. A chill ran down James's spine, but he didn't hesitate. Swiftly he pulled on his coat and stepped out into the night. The Thompson mansion loomed ahead, its grandeur amplified in the moonlight. Its stone facade, usually intimidating, now seemed like a silent plea for help. As he approached, the flashing lights of police cars painted a grim picture against the mansion's stark exterior. The scene was a hive of activity, with officers scurrying about securing the perimeter. Inside, the mansion was a stark contrast to its lively exterior. The grandeur gave way to a chilling stillness. Mr. Thompson, a titan in the world of business, lay lifeless on the cold floor of his study, a single gunshot wound marring his chest. His wife, Mrs. Thompson, was a portrait of despair, her wails echoing through the silent halls. The usually composed butler, Mr. Jenkins, was a picture of shock, his face as white as the mansion's marble floors. James's keen eye scanned the room, his mind already piecing together the puzzle. Tonight, he was not just a detective. He was a seeker of truth in a house filled with secrets. He began his investigation, questioning the staff and the Thompsons' guests, who had been at a dinner party earlier in the evening. Everyone seemed to have an alibi, yet something felt amiss, something that gnawed at his seasoned instincts. As he stepped into the grand old mansion, a sense of foreboding filled the air. The stage was set for a mystery that would test his skills like never before. The case of the silent witness had just begun. Inside the mansion, a grim tableau unfolded before James's eyes. The grandeur of the Thompson estate was marred by the stark reality of a life abruptly ended. Mr. Thompson, a titan of industry, now lay motionless on the polished mahogany floor of his study, a single gunshot piercing his chest. The air was thick with tension and unspoken questions. His wife, Mrs. Thompson, was a picture of despair, her sobs echoing through the ornate halls. Every now and then, a tremble would run through her frame, her grief palpable. And standing in the shadow was Mr. Jenkins, the butler, his face as white as the gloves he wore, his eyes wide with fear. James, the seasoned detective he was, began his meticulous investigation. He started by questioning the estate staff and the dinner party guests, who had been enjoying the Thompsons' hospitality just hours before the grim discovery. Each one provided an alibi, a neat timeline fitting like puzzle pieces. Yet something felt off to James, a discordant note in this symphony of alibis. His attention was drawn to a painting that hung on the wall, a portrait of a young woman, her face radiating serenity. The painting, in contrast to the opulence around it, seemed oddly out of place. Upon inquiring, Mrs. Thompson brushed it off as an inherited piece of art, but James, with his sharp mind and keen eye for detail, felt an instinctive pull towards it. There was something about that painting, something that screamed clue in this complex mystery. As the night wore on, James found himself drawn back to the painting time and time again. Its enigmatic allure was undeniable. It was as if the woman in the painting held secrets that were waiting to be unveiled. Something told him that this silent witness on the wall held the key to the puzzle. Yet amidst the grief and shock, a painting on the wall caught James's keen eye. It was this observation, this instinct, that would lead him deeper into a mystery that was about to turn into a labyrinth of secrets, lies, and betrayal. Something about the serene face in the portrait seemed out of place. Detective James stood there, his gaze locked on the painting. It was a portrait of a young woman, her beauty frozen in time on the canvas. The woman's tranquility seemed to contrast sharply with the grim scene of the murder. Mrs. Thompson, looking rather distressed, was quick to dismiss the painting as mere inherited art. Yet James couldn't help but feel that the woman in the portrait was silently screaming out a story, a secret buried deep within the annals of the Thompson family history. A secret, perhaps, that held a clue to the murder. Against the backdrop of dismissive remarks and hasty alibis, James decided to dig deeper. He decided to unravel the threads of the Thompson family history and the origins of the mysterious painting. His keen eyes, sharp mind, and years of experience as a detective told him that the painting was not just a piece of art. It was a silent witness. Hours turned into days as James delved into the past. He scoured through old newspaper clippings, court records, and family letters, looking for any connection between the Thompsons and the woman in the painting. The more he discovered, the more he was convinced that the painting was more than just a decorative piece. It was a window into a past filled with secrets, deceit, and a tragic death. As the puzzle pieces began to fall into place, James felt a chill run down his spine. The woman in the painting was no stranger to the Thompson family. She was Mrs. Thompson's twin sister, a tragic figure who had died under mysterious circumstances years ago. The serene face in the portrait was not just a silent witness to the murder of Mr. Thompson, but also held the key to a secret that had lain buried for years. In the silent eyes of the portrait, James sensed a story waiting to be unearthed. His determination to uncover the truth was stronger than ever. The silent witness had begun to speak, and James was all ears. As James delved into the past, secrets began to spill out. He was led down a trail of forgotten memories and hidden truths, straight into the heart of a tragedy that had been buried for years. The portrait of the young woman, so serene and beautiful, was not just an inherited piece of art as Mrs. Thompson had claimed. No, this painting held a much deeper, darker significance. The woman in the portrait was not a stranger, but a ghost from Mrs. Thompson's past. She was her twin sister, a mirror image in beauty and grace. But her life had been cut tragically short, a loss that was said to be accidental. Yet, as James uncovered more, he began to see a different picture. The twin sister's death was not an accident. It was a murder. The serene face in the painting concealed a tale of jealousy and betrayal, a story that had been kept silent for far too long. And the prime suspect of this heinous crime was none other than Mrs. Thompson herself. The revelation was like a jigsaw puzzle falling into place. The peculiar behavior of Mrs. Thompson, her dismissal of the painting, and the eerie feeling that something was off, it all made sense now. Mrs. Thompson was not a grieving widow but a woman haunted by her past. James could almost see the scene unfold. The twins, identical in appearance but so different in nature. One filled with jealousy and rage and the other the unsuspecting victim. The murder, swift and brutal. The secret, buried deep, only to be unearthed years later by a detective with a keen eye for detail. Mrs. Thompson, the prime suspect in her sister's murder, had carried this dark secret with her, hidden behind the walls of the grand Thompson mansion. But secrets have a way of coming out, of making themselves known, and this secret, concealed for years, had finally been brought to light. A ghost from the past had returned to haunt Mrs. Thompson. Confronted with the truth, Mrs. Thompson's facade crumbled. The once stoic matriarch of the Thompson estate was now a shell of her former self. Her face, drained of color, mirrored the pale moonlight illuminating the room. The revelation of her dark secret had brought her to her knees. The portrait of her twin sister, the silent witness to her crime, watched from above, her serene face a stark contrast to the scene unfolding beneath. Detective James watched as Mrs. Thompson broke down, her confession pouring out like a dam unleashed. She admitted to the heinous act she committed years ago, the murder of her own twin sister. A crime born out of jealousy and greed, a crime that she thought she had successfully concealed. But the painting, her silent sister, had given her away. Yet, the tale didn't end there. A second truth was about to be unveiled, a truth hidden behind the discreet demeanor of Mr. Jenkins, the butler. Mr. Jenkins, who had served the Thompsons faithfully for years, held a secret of his own. He had been a silent witness to the crime, his love for the deceased sister keeping him quiet all these years. His loyalty to a ghost and his secret love had turned him into a silent guardian, protecting Mrs. Thompson from the consequences of her actions. But no more. The truth was out, and justice was about to be served. The police arrested Mrs. Thompson, her wealth and status unable to shield her from the arm of the law. As she was led away, the mansion seemed to breathe out a sigh of relief, as if it was finally free from the weight of the secret it had been forced to keep. The butler, Mr. Jenkins, despite his silence, was hailed as a hero. His love and loyalty, although misguided, were acknowledged. He stood tall, his burden finally lifted. In the end, the case of the silent witness was solved, and justice prevailed, all thanks to Detective James's relentless pursuit of the truth.